land and acknowledge that it was never ceded. Thanks to everyone for coming along for another May Day. You look fantastic yet again. So as I look out here, I can see flags from every union in WA, and what a colourful bunch you are. And I know people have gone to a lot of trouble to be here today to bring out their members, because this May Day is particularly important, and we'll talk some more about that in a minute. Can I begin by just a few acknowledgements? Firstly, one of the most talked about issues for May Day is the Best Dressed Dog competition. It was fiercely contested last year, and once again is on this year. So if you've dressed your dog up and you want to be in the competition, you need to get your dog photographed by someone from UnionsWA. If that hasn't happened already, the red tent, the tent with the red roof, is the UnionsWA stall, and they'll be able to help you with it. The winner will get a Change the Rules dog bandana, as well as some other goodies. But I'm told that the dog bandanas are pretty exclusive. Michele O'Neil's brought it with her today. It'll be the only one in Western Australia if you win it. So get your dog in there. Can I also acknowledge some of our supporters and sponsors? Australian Super, who every year support the coffee cart, and of course we know it would not be a union show without coffees, and we remain grateful for them for their support for this event, but their ongoing support for many of our activities throughout the year. I want to welcome Michele O'Neil, who you'll hear from shortly, the ACTU President. Could have been almost anywhere in Australia for May Day, but chose to come to Perth. So thank you. We're really pleased to have you. Can I also acknowledge that joining us today will be the Premier, Mark McGowan, and I know there's many of his parliamentary colleagues here from the Labor Party. I won't name you all, but again, just to acknowledge that you're here and to thank you for your support. I also want to acknowledge the Greens who are here today as well, and of course many others who are campaigning furiously in the federal election, and again, you're very welcome here. So I want to welcome in particular the unions, the union movement, the union members. Welcome you all here today for this, our great day of celebration. All around the world, union members, the union movement comes together to celebrate. It's a celebration of our movement, and it's a celebration of our proud history and everything that we've achieved for the working people we represent. It's about celebrating with our members, the ordinary working people who are committed to making sure that everyone has work that is decent and fair and safe and secure. And today, I want to particularly remember one of those members, Tom Edwards. He was a wharfie and of course a union member, and he was killed 100 years ago on the 4th of May in 1919 in a riot that happened in Fremantle, and it became known as Bloody Sunday or Fremantle's Eureka. Tom Edwards was a lumper, and his union, at the time the Fremantle Lumpers Union, but what we would call today the MUA, he was a member, a proud union member, and he died as a result of getting beaten on the head by the police as he went to assist a fellow union member, in fact the president of his union, who'd also been knocked down by a copper during a riot on the wharves. And on that day they were part of a massive crowd of maritime workers, but also their wives and also their children who had all gathered at the docks. They were there to stare down the police, to stare down the non-union labourers that were doing their work, and they were there to demand the right to work. And the reason things got out of hand on that day was because the Conservative state government at the time had a non-union workforce there, and they wanted to break the strength of the maritime unions. Shame. And so we ask ourselves, well, why were they trying to do that? Perhaps not much has changed in 100 years. But they were trying to break the maritime unions because that was a union that was trying to fight to improve wages and conditions for their members. They were fighting for secure jobs and guaranteed work. They were fighting for safe work. And they were fighting for decent pay to support their families and shorter shifts rather than the very long shifts that they were working at the time. They were fighting for a right to work and to have a job that would support them and their families. And as we stand here today, 100 years later, remembering that last year we acknowledged the 20 years since the MUA dispute on the wharfs, and as we acknowledge that we're still fighting for some of those things today, you'd be forgiven for thinking that not enough has changed. Tom Edwards had a massive funeral. He was mourned greatly. Thousands of people came to his funeral from all over the state. Flags flew at half-mast. Vessels in the harbour dipped their ensigns. And all over the state, work stopped for 3 minutes to recognise that he had paid the ultimate price. So today, as we come here for May Day, we remember Tom Edwards on the 100-year anniversary of that significant event that happened here, that affected clearly the maritime unions and their members, but affected working people right across this state. And we particularly remember what Tom and his comrades and their families were fighting for: secure jobs, fair pay, and decent, safe work. And we remember that we continue as a movement to fight for these things today, the fundamental rights for working people. And these are the issues that remain at the heart of our Change the Rules campaign. We continue to fight to honour workers like Tom Edwards, who paid the ultimate price. And we continue the fight for working people who will come after us, who also deserve secure jobs and fair pay and safe and decent work. Friends, May Day has always been about honouring working class heroes and what they fought for and what they have won. It's for celebrating all those who share our union values, whether those peoples are with us in the movement, whether they're friends in politics, friends in the community, whether they're in religious or community organisations or anywhere else. Collectively, we are the people who want to make our workplaces and our society fair and decent and just. Now, friends, we also know that they've got people that don't support us everywhere. We've got enemies. They want to belittle the union movement. They want to dirty our reputation. They want to tell us that our time has passed. But we know the truth, that with nearly 2 million union members in Australia, we are the biggest social movement in Australia. And friends, we also know that when we're united and when we're determined, that we are a powerful force for what is fair and decent in our society. The union movement has always been a powerful force for positive and progressive change. Our agenda has always been about making our country better for everyone. Everyone who lives here, everyone who works here. We've always strived to find ways to share the wealth of this great country around, so that everyone can have enough to live a good life. We fought for the 38-hour week. We fought for penalty rates for weekend work. We fought for universal superannuation, for sick leave, annual leave, for leave so that we can care for the people we love. We fought for safe workplaces and compensation if people get injured. Comrades, over the years we have fought for many things and we have won. We have helped make Australia the great place that it is today. And we also know we've always had to fight for what we believe in. That bosses and Conservative governments, they've never just handed us the things that we want on a plate. We've had to fight every step of the way against bosses, against Conservative governments, but we have built Australia into a great place. It's been our hard work in the union movement, alongside our friends, that's built our society and our nation into one of the greatest places to live and bring up a family. It's been our sweat, our tears, it's been our vision, our relentless determination, our solidarity that's delivered that. We have stood together, we've campaigned, and we have won. And friends, as we stand here today, 2 weeks before a really important federal election, I don't think there's been a more important time for us to remember how powerful we are when we stand together and when we fight for the things that we believe in. And let us be clear, there's a lot at stake in this federal election. Conservative governments might try and sneak back into power pretending that they won't make any changes, but their track record is clear. They attack our living standards, they strip away our rights to good jobs and decent pay and fair lives, and they attack and cut the things that make our society fair, like decent education and our public hospital system. And they'll reward the big end of town with more tax cuts and by turning a blind eye once again to corporate greed and excess. And so that's why we're here on May Day, particularly May Day this year. We're here to remember what's at stake. We're here to remember that collectively we've always had a bigger, fairer, better vision for the kind of society that we can be. That we believe working people should be able to live with dignity, they should be able to work with safety, and they should have respect. They should be able to earn a living wage and bring up their family without having to work 2 and 3 jobs. And we believe everyone should have the opportunity to a decent education, good health care, a good job, and a comfortable retirement when the time comes. No one, in our view, should get left behind. Comrades, the trade union movement's been at the front of the struggle for many generations to build Australia into a great country. We come here today to celebrate our successes, but we come here today, particularly this year, knowing we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to vote out the Liberal government so we can change the rules for working people and bring an end to growing inequality in this country. And we know this is not just about us. It's about those workers that will come after us. It's about our children. It's about our grandchildren. And it's about making sure that when the trade union movement gathers here in years to come to celebrate May Day, that they are still celebrating the role this trade union movement's had in making Australia a country that is good and just and fair and decent. And I say to you today that that is exactly what working class heroes like Tom Edwards and his comrades would expect for us, that we honour their legacy and we fight for a future for working people in this country. Thanks very much for coming here today. It's going to be a great day, but before we march, I'm really delighted to welcome the President of the ACTU, Michele O'Neil.
Great to be with you, comrades, here in Freo. It's fantastic to see this crowd. I want to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land we're meeting on today, the Whadjuk Noongar people. Pay my respects to their elders past and present, and it always was and it always will be Aboriginal land. And of course, this is no ordinary May Day, but we must remember to begin that May Day is International Workers' Day. It's a day where workers around the world stop and recognise what is important for working people's lives and the lives of our families and communities. And when we acknowledge as big as this world is, as small as the differences between workers' struggles are. And I want to say that even this week, this very week of May Day, we've seen this week some of our comrades in Fiji arrested. And they were the General Secretary of the Fiji Trade Union Congress, the Secretary of the Nurses Union, the Teachers Union and their presidents, and 29 rank and file members were arrested. And you know why they were arrested? They were arrested because they were going to protest. They were going to join together and take action to try and win back the jobs of workers in the water industry in Fiji. And without any charges being laid and with no basis in law, they were rounded and locked up. But what we know is that it was the work, the international solidarity of our union movement and other movements around the world that quickly over the course of 48 hours got those workers and their leaders released. Thank you for all of you who were part of that. And of course, coming from the union that I do before I was at the ACTU, I cannot go past this week without, of course, acknowledging the 6-year anniversary of the death of 1,138 workers at the Rana Plaza collapse in Bangladesh. Those workers were simply sitting behind clothing sewing machines, making clothes for the likes of us. No worker should put their life at risk at work. But to think that workers who were simply sewing clothes somehow were forced back into a building that they knew was cracking, forced at threat of loss of wages and worse, at beatings, back into a building that many of them knew was a death trap, only to die and to have their comrades die in their arms. But the things that would have made a difference, and this is why we're part of a global movement, the things that would make a difference for those workers, of course, is being part of a union, being part of collective struggle and strength, where leaders and delegates and activists could have said, no, we're not going back in. This is why we fight for union rights around the world. And I also want to acknowledge the 100-year anniversary of the death, of the murder of Tom Edwards. We cannot come here to this place and not pause and recognise that that fight, that struggle of the Fremantle Lumpers Union over 100 years ago was part of the same fight and struggle we're fighting today. The fight to be able to stand together and have workers' rights respected. To not just stand up for workers' rights, but to have a say about what should happen in our country. That dispute began because those workers took a principled stand about work not going over to Germany, and they blocked a ship to do that. It turned out, of course, in history that they were right, despite the fact that the police and the state said they were making it up. And Tom Edwards put his life on the line to fight for the rights of workers, not just for workers in terms of our conditions and to have good jobs, safe jobs, secure jobs and be treated with respect, but of course the right to be able to have a country that stands on an international stage for the rights of people everywhere to be treated with dignity and respect and for equality and justice. But also one of the things I want to say about May Day, International Workers' Day, is we often remember the big events. We remember the historic events that are written in history books. I want to take a moment. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the million acts of courage, defiance and solidarity that happen in workplaces all over this country and all over the world every day by ordinary working people. The sort of acts that don't get written about but that we know about. For example, we know about the workers who held the hand of a dying worker on a construction site when they had been injured fatally at work. We know the stories of workers who are working in our schools, where they have to bring together children of every nationality and race and teach those children about one of our great principles about not falling for racism and fear and division, but for respect of us all. We know about the nurses that fight not just for their rights and conditions, but for safe staffing levels, to make sure that whether we're in a hospital or whether we're with aged care workers, nurses and other workers in aged care, that we make sure that not only are workers treated right, but of course that the quality of our care when we care for those that are sick and those that are elderly, is the best type of quality care that we could ever wish to have. We stand and remember those workers who are in a factory, who have put up with years and years of being told to work harder and screamed at when they stop or break to go to the toilet even, when finally it gets to the day where those workers stand up and say, no, we will stop until we will not be treated like this again. It's for those millions of small acts of courage, strength and defiance and solidarity that our great union movement acknowledges today. But as I said, this is no ordinary May Day, and in 1 week and 6 days, we have the chance to change the direction of this country. Because this is not just a fight about who's going to win an election. Our campaign to change the rules is not just about an election, because what we know is the fight to change the rules doesn't end on the 19th of May. It ends when we win better rights and conditions for workers that are enshrined in law, and it ends when we breathe life into those rights in workplaces, because laws are only as good as the paper or the screen they're written on. What makes a difference is organised workers being part of a union, being able to realise their rights in a workplace to make a difference to their lives. That is what our fight to change the rules is about. And the reason we must change the direction of this country and change the rules and change the government because it is about workers' rights, but is also at its core about inequality. How can it be that one of the richest countries on earth, with 70 years now high of inequality, we've had 28 years of economic growth, but the top 1% of people in Australia have more wealth than the bottom and middle 70% combined? That is shameful and obscene. And of course, we're in a situation now where workers' wages are not even keeping up with the cost of living. 6 years now where workers' wages have been stagnant, or for many of us going backwards. Not able to meet the rising costs of the cost of our food, the cost of rent, of housing, of transport, of childcare, all of gas and electricity. All of these things are going up faster than the workers' wages are. And of course, combined with that, we are the third country in the OECD with the third highest rate of insecure work. And what do we mean by that? Well, I want to tell you about Zareen, a worker I met a couple of weeks ago. She told me that every night at 9 o'clock at night, she gets a text message. And that text message tells her about whether she's got to go to work the next day. And she's got to go to work the next day at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, depending on what the text message says. And she travels 2 hours to work. So for Zareen and for the thousands of other workers around this country whose jobs can no longer be relied on, where you don't know how much you're going to earn day to day, week to week, month to month, where you can't plan your life or the life of you and your family. How do you enter into a rental agreement, ever think about a mortgage? How do you ever plan to take your kids on a holiday when you don't even know whether you're going to work tomorrow, let alone next month? And of course, all of this, remember our history. One of the histories, and in fact, 1886 was the first May Day march in Chicago when workers struck and marched for an 8-hour day. But 1856 in Melbourne, stonemasons in this very country 30 years earlier walked off the job to fight for 8 hours work, 8 hours recreation and 8 hours rest. But that rallying cry is no longer a reality for so many workers in this country. This is why we are fighting to change the rules and to change this government. This is a once-in-a-generation chance because Scott Morrison and his government do not care. They do not care about ordinary workers. They are governing only for the big end of town, only for big business, for the mega rich and for their mates. They have no concern for ordinary workers and what is happening in our country, and their only message is a message of fear and division, trying to get us to be scared about each other, about the colour of our skin or the language we speak or the country we came from. Well, we will not fall for that. Our message will be stronger and louder. Our message will prevail. Our message of the rights of every person in this country to be treated with dignity. Our message of equality and fairness, and for workers to be treated and their families and communities to have the sort of services and conditions and life that we know is possible, is why we are going to vote out this vicious, rotten government on the 18th of May. So we are fighting to change the rules and change the government. And I want to make sure that they hear us all over Freo, all over Perth, all over Australia. When workers' rights are under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back. What do? Stand up, fight back. I want to say to you, happy May Day, solidarity to you all, and I also want to say that we have nothing to lose but our chains. Happy May Day.
That was great. Let's hear it for Michele O'Neil. I told you didn't want to miss it. That was fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. We have now a couple of things to do. The first of those is a photograph. Phil's